Hello and welcome to today's live. I am Tamara Kelly from Moogly, and today we are making the Bernat Macrame Keychains. A little bit of a departure for us. Normally I crochet, but today we're going to be doing a bit of macrame. And this is the perfect project if you haven't tried macrame before. I'm relatively new at it. I've only made a few projects in it myself. I haven't really designed any. I'm making other people's patterns. This one was designed by the Yarnspirations design team, and it really is the perfect beginner macrame project. It covers 3 of the most basic knots, one of which you probably already know, and another of which is very popular in crochet. So it is, like I say, an absolute perfect project to try if it's your first time doing macrame. It's also going to be a great project for any craft groups that you might be involved in, kids stuff coming up this summer. This is the kind of macrame kids can definitely get involved in, and it's also going to be really cute for craft fairs. One of the great things, let me go ahead and show you what we're making here. This is the Bernat Macrame Keychain. One of the great things about this project is not only is it cute, you can make it in a million colors, you can vary the length. Once you've made a couple, you've got it down, you can really customize it from there. But each one of these balls of Bernat Macrame will make 22 of these keychains. And that's phenomenal. That's exactly what you want in that sort of project that you do in a group, or like I say, for craft fairs. If you participate in those, it's just such a great option. So what I want to do right now is go to my YouTube here and make sure that I can see us so that I can answer any questions that you have as we are live today. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, if you're watching the recording, you can skip past here for just a second while I get our video up and rolling here on my end as well. The joy of lives always takes that little extra minute. There we are. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Shatika and Jan and Chris and Becky, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody else who's watching, really appreciate you being here. As I said, this is what we're making today, the Bernat Macrame Keychains. This is such a great project, great for starting macrame, really minimal supplies. So let's go ahead and go over to the overhand camera and talk about what we're using today. Okay, so here we have the printout of the pattern from Yarnspirations. This is a free pattern download you can get on their website. You just want to look for Bernat Macrame Keychain, or if you're watching this on YouTube or on Moogly, we'll have the link right there to take you to the pattern. Now, as you can see here, you can make this in any of the beautiful colors, and I don't have all of them, but I have just some of the wonderful, really, really extraordinary colors in Bernat Macrame. Usually when you get macrame yarn, you're pretty limited. You might find a white, off-white, maybe, a tan, maybe even black, but it's really rare to find, I think, macrame yarn in all these beautiful colors, and they've got even more than I've got here. I love the idea of combining these for different projects. Even in this project, we used 2 cords to make this project, so you absolutely could use 2 different colored cords to make it. In the pattern, of course, we just use 2 cords of the same color. But, if you want to get 2 skeins, then all of a sudden you can make 44 keychains. It really is such a great project. We'll go ahead and make sure we get a look at that label there. So you can go ahead and find that at your local store, or you can order Bernat Macrame on Yarnspirations. It is officially a 6-weight yarn. I haven't tried crocheting with it. I've tried crocheting over it. I do have some crochet projects for that. But you can see it is, pretty chunky stuff. And it is machine washable and dryable if you find that you need to do it. It's a mix of fibers, including recycled cotton, polyester, viscose, and acrylics. So we love that too. And look, there's so many great projects on Yarnspirations for this yarn. We're going to kind of just roughly shove it out of the way here. But this is the one we're making today. So in addition to the yarn itself, we need just a couple basic supplies. Scissors, of course, to cut the cord with. And I like using a yardstick, especially for this sort of project where our cords need to be 36 inches long. What more can you ask for, right? Break out the yardstick. Otherwise, of course, a ruler or a tape measure works just as well. We just want to be able to measure our yarn. Now, this pattern has this really fancy little key clasp on it. I didn't have those, but whatever you have works great. I have these really simple, just keychain rings here that I found. It looks like I found these over in the leather section at my local craft store. You can look in jewelry. You can look, like I say, in the leatherwork aisle. You'll find lots of really great little findings like this. And of course, like I say, you can really attach this to anything you like. So let's see. And then scissors, of course, I did mention. The last thing I want to mention, you won't find this in any patterns, but I always find it so handy when I'm making macrame. I like to have a little bit of tape so that I can tape down, in this case, the ring or the top of the project or whatever it is to the table to give me that little bit of tension so that it doesn't roll around on the table while I'm doing my knotting. So definitely optional, but I find it makes it a whole lot easier. So yay, hi Denise and Kim and Kathleen. I'm so glad you guys are all here. So that's awesome. Now, as you can see, I made one of these yesterday to practice and make sure I had it down, but this is the one I made first. When I got to the end of the first one that I made, I did not have enough yarn to properly tie it off the way they want us to in the pattern. I had run out of length. I managed to just kind of tie one of the strings around it to secure it, but then I remade it with one little change to the pattern and it worked so much better. And the change I made was that rather than folding the cords in half, I kept them longer on the outside, and I'll demonstrate that for you here in a minute. But I just want to point out that is one small change that I made in this pattern that I think makes it just a little bit easier. We don't necessarily want to cut longer lengths because then we're going to just be cutting some off and wasting it, but we can angle our yarn so that the outside cords that we're going to put on our ring like this are a little bit longer than the inside cords. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's try. I've already pre-cut 2 cords, and like I say, the previous ones I made all in one color. I want to see what they turn out when I use 2 different color cords, so we're going to do that together. But like I say, both of these are 36 inches long. That is the first step. Can't quite get it all on screen here. You can use, your measuring stick from wherever you have it. I also have one from Home Depot, so don't come at me about the the hardware store. But wherever you want to get one, just cut it to 36 inches in length. And of course, it doesn't need to be, super exact. We're going to be trimming off the ends when we're all done anyway. So let me set that measuring stick aside. Yardstick, that's the word I was not coming to mind. So now what we're going to do, we've got our 2 cords cut, and the instructions say, this is where I differ a little bit. It says fold it in half and tie each to the keychain or whatever it is you're adding it to. I'm going to do that a little bit differently. Let's do the yellow one first. Again, doesn't matter. Whatever color you like to use. It's kind of hard to fit this all on screen, but I'm going to fold it over. I found it worked really well if I kind of folded it over so that the fold was only about half the length, almost like it's in thirds right there. And the reason we want the shorter half on the inside of these 2 is because those 2 strings in the middle, if you will, we're just going to be knotting around. They won't be making any knots. So that's kind of the explanation. It will make more sense as we keep going. So I'm going to go ahead, grab my ring, just put that fold right through, and then get that really close there. We just send both of those ends through that loop. It's the same technique. A few years ago, it was really popular to add braids and tassels and things to crochet hats. This was the way those chunks of yarn were usually attached. So if you've added tassels or fringe before, you've probably done that little loop. So now we want to look at it again. Okay, so we want the short one to be on the inside. So that means I need to put the other string, if you will, here to the left. So sometimes this takes me a couple tries too. Let's see here. We've got, again, I want to fold that so it's about in thirds really. So that's just 2/3 of it are folded there. Then we'll see, we're going to put that same way, just right through the ring. Pull that loop up a little bit so I can grab the ends and pull those on through. And this is where I always have to check my work. Nope, I did it backwards. Do you see that? The loops are different. It always gets me every time. It means I'm going to need to go through this way. And then I need to double check. Will that put one on the inside? Nope, we need to flip it over. We just want to make sure that the shorter half, if you will, if you want to call it a half, of the string is in the middle there. So now we want to put it this way. Like I say, sometimes you just have to try it a couple times till it's on there, right? I'm right there with you. There we go. Now we can see those loops are on the same side, so they match. And now we double check. Did we get those shorter strings on the inside? Let's see here. We'll continuous shot, pull it up, straighten it out. Yep. The shorter strings are on the inside. The longer strings are on the outside, just like that. And this is that photo kind of right here in the pattern. Here they've started knotting, but so far we've just added our 2 strings. The two ones in the middle, we're going to be tying knots around. These are the only two we're going to be using to actually make our knots with. So what we did right there, attaching the yarn to the ring or stick or whatever you've got, you can actually tie it right onto your yardstick if you just want to give it a try today and get started. That right there is called the lark's head knot. That is the official term for that knot, and that's your first macrame knot right there. Use that one very often in macrame to attach to other things. It's just a really popular knot, and now you know its name, and that's the first one right there. So now, the next thing we do in our instructions is we work our half knot until the work from the lark's head knot measures about 3 inches. So you can break back out the measuring cord tape for that. You can eyeball it. You're going to work. 3 inches isn't that long. It's only about that far. So it's not going to take very long at all. But this right here is the diagram for that half knot. Looks pretty complicated, but we're going to do it together. And once you've made a couple, they really start flying by. So first things first, I need to secure my ring right there. So I'm going to grab some of that tape. And I always like to do it with 2 pieces just to be extra secure. Kind of hard to see, I know, because it's clear tape, but that's what I have laying around. And, when it comes to crafting, I always like using what I've got laying around first. There we go. So I'm just going to tape it right here. Try not to get the pattern there. Right there to the table. So I can pull that up and switch it around if I need to. But for now, it's nice and secure. Now, these first 2 knots I like to pull down pretty firmly on. But after that, we're just going to tie these knots relatively gently. If you really tie on them tightly, it can cause it to warp a little bit. As we go, and this is something that I found I needed to practice with macrame, you just want to kind of, let me pull up the good one here, kind of keep that tension even so that they all end up about the same size. And each one of these horizontal bars here is made with each one of these lark's head knots. Or yes, the half knot, excuse me. This is the half knot. Okay, so we've got our long cords on the outside, short cords on the inside. First thing we're going to do, and this doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed because we're only using our hands here. We don't have a hook. We're going to take the leftmost cord, and we're just going to lay it over the middle 2 cords. Then we're going to take the rightmost cord, lay it over that left cord that just came over, slip it under the 2 cords in the middle, and then pull it up in that loop right there. Don't worry, we're going to be doing this dozens of times. After you've pulled that through, you can see here, you can just pull those together really gently. Give the center cords a couple tugs here so that we can get those up at the top. Give those a little squeeze together, and just like that. We don't want to pull super hard. We just want to make sure it's just gently right there. That's our first one. Now our long cords are back on the outside again. They've switched. If you're using the same color, you won't be able to tell, but the long cords are still on the outside, and we do the exact same thing. We just do this same series of moves over and over again. We take the leftmost one, lay it over the center 2. We take the rightmost one, lay it over that one, under the center 2, and then grab it up through that little loop right there, that space. And then pull again. Just have to tug down on those center ones every once in a while. You can see why I like having that tape down. And then we just pull again till that knot's about the same size as the one above it. We don't have to pull super hard. And then that is it. That's the knot that we just keep going for 3 inches. So as you keep going, it gets a little bit quicker. We lay the left one over and just pull this one around and up through. There we go. Scooch it up to the top a little bit and pull it so it's about the size of the other knots. Now the fun thing is about using these 2 cords, you can see we're going to get this really cool striping effect, both on the sides and through the center. So you can have a lot of fun with your colors, make these for sports teams, school teams, whatever else you've got special colors for, special occasions, whatever makes you happy, really. So the left one is over the center 2. The right one, we bring over that one, underneath, and just up through that loop on the side. Always give those center ones a little tug and pull that knot to about the same size. Now you'll notice it wants to twist on me. That's good. That's how we get that great twisty look. That's one of the features of this knot. You've probably seen some macrame plant hangers that kind of have cords in this, or it features this section with this great look. So we can just kind of keep straightening it out as we go. It will curl up with a little bit of encouragement when we're all done. But if you need to, if it starts twisting a little too much, you can pull up your tape and retape it. But you want to make sure you keep track of which one's the left when you do that and which one is the right when you do that, so you don't accidentally flip and start working from the other side. So for now, I'm going to just push it down. It'll twist on me later. I'm just going to push it right down and keep going. The left one goes over the center two. The right one goes over the left one, under the center two, and up through that loop. Very easy. Now, I don't know a whole lot about knots, I'll be honest. Macrame is the most knotting I've ever done. So I don't know if this half knot has a lot of uses outside of macrame. I imagine, I always think of sailing when I think of knotting, which is silly because the closest I've come to sailing is a riverboat. But it's just a lot of fun. And I think it has some really neat effects here, whether you work it in 2 colors or in 1. So if you have any questions, if you need me to take that a little bit slower again, definitely put that in the comments. Let's go ahead and do another slow one. You can see it's starting to turn. I just keep pushing it back. It'll turn when we're done. Left one over the top. Right one over that one. Underneath, the center two, and up through that hole. So depending, on what you're making and how busy everybody is and how chatty it is, it might be easier to do it in colors. That might make it a little bit more complicated. You just know it's going to be different every time if you're working 2 colors here. So over, under, and through. Let's see, we are probably about 2 inches or so in. We can always pull up our trusty yardstick here. Probably should have grabbed a tape measure, would have been easier at this point, but let's see. We want to measure from the lark's head knot through the half knot, so we're about 2 inches in, which tells you just how quick this is, especially once you've got it going and you're not, talking through each stitch here. We go under and up through. So you can see why I wanted those longer pieces on the outside. The center ones, they aren't in any knots. They're not really going to change their length significantly, but having the longer pieces on the outside gives us a little more wiggle room as we're making our knots for sure. Now it's really wanting to turn at this point, so I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to retape it and shift it a little bit here, I think, because I want to try and keep everything as flat as I can. I want to also try and keep those center 2 cords flat so they don't twist inside our column here. So now I'm going to remember, this is going to make it a little bit easier, that the left one is my blue one. So if I need to pick up and flip this over, because you can see minimal encouragement, it really, really wants to go ahead and spin on us. Go ahead and let it spin at this point. But I want to make sure that as I put it back down, I keep my left one on that blue, because that's where I finished off. There we are. So now we can kind of push it back to where we need it, get everything straightened out, and continue on adding those knots. And if you find you run out of room on your outside cords before you get to 3 inches, that's okay. I mean, the pattern says it needs to be 3 inches, but oops, we got the wrong cord there, didn't we? Let's straighten that out. Pattern says it should be 3 inches, but of course you can work it to whatever length you like. If you want to cut longer cords, you might not get as many per skein, but you'll have lots of options for what you can make. This would also I think be really fun as like a bag handle, a really sturdy bag handle. So lots of things you could make with this technique for sure. We're just going to continue on here, make just a couple more of those knots. Let me just check the questions. There we are. Yes, and Kathleen asks, will I be doing other macrame projects? I hope so. If you guys like these, absolutely. I don't know if my mind works in the way to design them yet, but I can definitely demonstrate them, at least the easy ones. You'll be watching me develop my skills as we go here. All right, so let's do one more knot and then finish this one up, because it is starting to get a little short here on the sides, and the shorter it gets, the trickier it gets to do that final knot that finishes it all off. There we are. I don't know if the pattern testers, somebody said, I don't know, I'm surprised the pattern testers didn't have trouble with the short cords. I am too, so maybe that was just a failing on my part as a newbie, but I'm passing on what I've learned. We'll put it that way. I found it made it a lot easier to have those longer cords on the outside, but maybe with enough experience, it isn't necessary. We'll see. Let's do, I think I've got room for one more here. We want to make it as long as we can. Use up as much of our cord here as we can. And then push that together, and you can see it's already got that really lovely twist. You can straighten it out if you want to, but it wants to twist. So now it's got that great look. So when you've got the length you'd like, and I think that's pretty darn close. I'd say that's about 3 inches there. Then the final thing we do is very simply an overhand knot. It's a third knot today, but believe me, I'm sure you've made this one before, right? We're going to take all our cords together, and we're just going to make a big knot in them. You can see that's why I wanted this length. Maybe there's some technique for doing this that doesn't require quite as much length. Maybe they're just better at it than I am, but I needed a little extra length there. So we're just going to basically tie it in a knot. And I found I did have to kind of come up into the macrame part, but then I can pull the knot back down. So let's go ahead and untape it at this point. I think it'll be a little bit easier. I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to tie that, go ahead and make that last knot a little tighter to get it tighter rather, to get us a little more length. And then as best we can here, we want to get all those cords through. I might have gone too far, might have girl bossed too close to the sun, but we'll see if we can pull all these ends through this one, or if we should have stopped just a little bit sooner. Got 4 cords here, so it can take a minute. Now you'll notice that the macrame cord does tend to unravel from the end. We'll see that here at the end. This is very purposeful. This is a feature of macrame. You often want to create the tassels with the ends like this, and I definitely went a little too far. So if you find this happens to you, we need more length before I can tie that knot. We can simply undo the last couple of those half knots. Let's just take 2 of those out. I just simply needed a little bit more room, and that's okay. Still very attractive. So let's try that again. Now with a little bit more length, I think I'll be able to get it. There we go. Much easier. I just knotted too many times. Pull that on through, and there we go. Now this one, it's that final knot that's going to hold everything together, so we do want to go ahead and pull this one nice and tight. There we go. Try not to grunt into the microphone here. There we go. Nice and tight. We really want these to pull together right at the end. So when you do that, make sure that you're not pulling back here, because that could mess up the tension in these knots. We just want to kind of keep that tension right in that knot itself. There we go. Alrighty, so now we've got that really fun twist. I love the way this turned out in 2 colors. It's the first time I've tried it with 2 colors, so that's really pleasing. And then now it's all made, but we want to do a little bit of finishing work. We want to trim the ends to about 1.5 inches. Now, that's what the pattern designer decided to do. If you want longer fringe, shorter fringe, you trim it off to where you'd like. I would leave at least 1 inch because you don't want it to start unraveling up the project itself. But beyond that, it's whatever you like. So I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to eyeball it. Cut it across. Make sure your scissors are nice and sharp for this one. I had to try several pairs of scissors before I found a pair that I really liked doing this with. So then once you have those all unwound, it says to use a comb to go ahead and fringe them out. I don't have a comb laying around, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the ends of my scissors or even my fingers to get it started. And you can see I'm just going to untwist it and start pulling apart those threads. And this is such an easy and great way to get that fringed look. So if you are making a project with Bernat Macrame, and it's going to be something where you're going to be knotting it for a lot longer. We've only been working on this for, 20 minutes or so. If this was a project that was going to be larger, like a hammock, or, just a larger project where you're going to be working with the cords for a lot longer, what I would recommend you do is that you take a little piece of tape. Let's grab this, my little reject from last night. Grab a little piece of tape and wrap up that end until you're ready to trim it off and do whatever fringing or finishing work you want to do. That will keep it from continuing to unravel while you're still working with it. But then once you're done, we just untwist it, and then you can use a comb. I like to just use the end of my scissors, closed, of course, don't want to accidentally cut anything, and just start pulling it apart into that really great fringe. I would definitely recommend that you trim your cord before you do this part. It's going to be a whole lot easier to cut 4 cords than to cut, I don't know, 200 little threads here, that's for sure. But yeah, we just comb it out, and there it is, all finished. In about 20 minutes or so, live while explaining it, I was able to get one of these made. So you can only imagine, if you're making these for craft fairs or in a group, how great this project is going to be. Classes, whatever you like to do, it's just a really great macrame project. Now, absolutely, I'm seeing some positive feedback, so I definitely would love to do some more macrame projects. If you guys have specific requests, do try to leave those in the comments rather than the chat, because the chat probably won't show up on the replays, and I want to make sure that I don't miss them. But again, thank you so much for joining me. Let's go ahead and come back to the other camera. All right, so this is the project we just made. As you can see, we can do it in multicolors, one color, and I just love the options. There are so many colors of Bernat macrame that you just don't find in macrame yarn elsewhere. And it's not a huge commitment. You're not buying, you know, a giant cone of it that you're not sure what you're going to do with. You can buy all these fun little colors, make some small projects, make, you know, nearly 2 dozen small projects with just one skein. It's just a really fun yarn. So definitely check it out. You'll find it at your local or your big box craft stores, I should say. And of course, it's also available on yarnspirations.com. I'll have a link on Moogly along with this video, so you can come back and reference it anytime. And it will stay up here on YouTube as well. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. See you all soon. Bye, everybody.